Borori oyo nitogekoyo Ngai ne aturathimĩire na akiuga tũtikoimakwo.
This is the Nairobi-Nakuru Highway. Many pass through this road on a daily basis with little knowledge about what took place in Lari many years ago. The year is 1953. A young Kenya is fighting for her independence, but is about to witness one of the worst massacres to take place in the country. In this particular one, two parties of the same community are pitted against each other when they were supposed to be fighting a common enemy. This is the story of the Lari massacre and how it ultimately formed a stepping stone in Kenya's fight for independence through the Mau Mau uprising. The view here may be beautiful, but in 1953, it made for an ugly picture following a war that was brewing amongst the Agekoyo people who are fed up with the oppression they suffered under the white settlers and their loyalists. A deep part of that history survives through the very people that witnessed it.
Tugicoka rĩngĩ twacokire anini bũrũri wa Bama ndigacoka kwaria.
So that Mau Mau terrorists cannot rely on a routine.
Icio nĩ thigari cia anake aitũ iria cietete kũrũĩra mũthũngũ magĩũka gũkũ rĩ nĩ makĩmenyire matingĩenda mbara ĩngĩ yũke. Rĩu rĩ magĩkĩra mũthũngũ atĩrĩ tũcokire mĩgũnda itũ na tũtikwenda mbara magĩkĩinĩrwo mbara ndĩrĩ mwago ona mwamĩona nĩ atũninĩire marigithathi athuri kenai mũine wega ma nyumĩte kwa mũmbi mathĩna ndirĩ. Waigua rĩu kuoguo rĩ ona ũkĩonanagia atĩ mbara nĩ njũru nĩ ũkwĩra mũndũ niĩ ndikwenda mbara tondũ rĩ onawe marigithathi maku rĩ nĩ magũthira na niĩ marigithathi maitũ rĩ nĩ magũthira tũikare thĩ twaranĩrie rĩrĩa makĩregire rĩ na nĩ mamenyire mũthũngũ nĩ oigaga mbu nĩ momenyire mũthũngũ nĩ arĩraga arathwo nĩ mamenyire mũthũngũ nginya nĩ agũkua makĩmenya ũyũ mũndũ ndangĩtũra tũngiaga.
I am the leader of the Mau Mau War Veterans Association. I cannot go out of the compound. Here is my wife's mausoleum. She was also a freedom fighter.
How old are you now?
96.
96? Wow.
I want to start by telling you that this country was occupied by the British colonial power. That regime was treating the people of Kenya like beasts. Wadiaga tu kenete, tugacoka tu kenete, rugendo rwitũ rwarĩ rwega tũgĩthiĩ na tũgĩcoka.
Nĩtwomereirie mathĩna ona mĩnyamaro mĩingĩ na tũkiuga atĩ tũtingĩmaka inya ũragĩra kũingĩ na tũkiuga atĩ tũtingĩmaka inya ũragĩra kũingĩ. inyuothe aciari kenai inyuothe aratai kawira no karathie na mbere gatira coka na thutha.
These are Mau Mau songs. These are the songs that we were singing when we were fighting the British government. Then Kamaro composed that.
Thikiriria irugano ruru rwa kirima gia tumutumu mumenye mwenye nyagari muoyo na ndari hindi agatutiga.
Ririkana onacio Mau Mau aingĩ matiarĩ athomu, kwoguo rĩ nĩgetha matware ũrĩa marenda kũrĩ andũ nĩ matũmagĩra nyĩmbo ciarĩ cia tene.
And this they would hear and they would get encouraged.
Aciari tigai kumaka mwana nĩ aciaragwo na gatua mwĩre mũingĩ twĩyũmĩrĩrie bũrũri ũthire karama mwĩre mũingĩ twĩyũmĩrĩrie.
Here's Mau Mau, the spark that will light the fuse. Only time will tell, and time is running out.
So after the Second World War, and many young people had gone to war with the Mzungu, they realized, kumbe this guy is just like us. They came up now with the resistance movement, which now exploded in the 50s, early 50s, into a full-scale war.
The 12,000 square miles of fertile and healthy highlands reserved for white farmers have long been a source of grievance to the rapidly increasing population of Kikuyus.
Kikuyus did not have communal land. The communal land was forest and the Mariuku.
Meanwhile, the white man's pioneering continued, building cities, mines, industries, railroads.
After the First World War, the British had to demobilize their soldiers. And the soldiers who were demobilized had to be compensated. The British did not have money to compensate these soldiers. So they took them to colonies and settled them on land. This again was repeated after the Second World War.
At the end, they went to a place called Tigone. They moved the whole African family from Tigone to settle British Army officers.
Chief Luka Kahangara and other chiefs were convinced to move to Lari because Kahangara told the people, can we accept alternate land that is equivalent with water, good soil, fertile soil, grazing land, and forests? And the settlers agreed. But again, when they were taken to Lari, the land wasn't enough.
Njĩtagwo Joy Gikua na njiarĩirwo gũkũ Gĩthirioni. Ndarĩ ona mĩaka yakwa, ndarĩ ona mĩaka hakuhĩ 19. Nĩ ithuĩ twatũmagwo tũgatwarĩre Mau Mau kĩ irio. Waigua rĩu?
Amarĩtwa njĩtagwo Elizabeth Wambui. Nĩ baba nĩ anyendete mũno na arĩ indo nyingĩ mũno. Ona arĩ mũgũri wa mbũri icio. Niĩ nĩoigire ndigũthoma gĩthomo gĩtigũtuĩka ndwara. Uguo niĩ ndiagĩthomire tondũ baba nĩ anjĩraga atĩ ũgĩra wĩna guo ũkĩrĩte wa gĩthomo.
Gũkũ nĩkuo homeguard yaikaraga ĩgathiũrũrũkĩrio na mũtaro thĩinĩ wa mũciĩ ũyũ. Ciathiũrũrũkĩrio na mũtaro nĩkuo ciaikaraga. Haha nĩ hakĩtwo kanyũmba kamwe igũrũ ka biti ta 20-30 karĩ igũrũ.
kaikaraga home guard kuragira ici kuragira ici ingi
andu aitũ menyaga atĩrĩ mbara ĩno ĩgĩtwo nĩ anene negekĩrwo hinya nĩ njongana thigari cia kamatimu negekĩrwo hinya nĩ njongana thigauti cia tũĩ.
Luka Kahangara, the most senior colonial loyalist, would pay the ultimate price for agreeing to settle his people in the lesser Lari, where he received the biggest portion of land for him and his relatives, wealth, and the title of Chief of Lari. On March 26th, the stage for the bloody massacre was set at his home area.
Papa witũ ũtukũ ũcio atwĩrĩte tũtikoime nyũmba ciakinya thaa ithatũ. Kwĩ maũndũ marathiĩ na mbere kuma ithaa rĩu rĩa thaa ithatũ. Rĩu nĩ twagĩkomire ithuĩ oro tene.
Kũrĩa andũ maumĩte Mũrang'a, kũrĩa andũ maumĩte kũrĩa Rift Valley, othe magĩũka magĩtũngana ha. Magĩtũngana ha rũriĩ rwa Kĩrenga, rũtagwo rũriĩ rwa Kĩrenga. Magĩtũngana hau. Makĩgayana. Amwe magĩthiĩ mwena wa Magĩna, arĩa angĩ magĩũka na gũkũ Gĩthirioni, arĩa angĩ magĩthiĩ Gĩtuamba, arĩa angĩ magĩthiĩ na gũkũ Checheni.
Ingĩra ikwaruka. Ha. Ha. Sawa. Ingĩra ikwaruka. Ha. Ha. Sawa. Nĩguo twagĩkorirwo ũtukũ ta thaa ithatũ mweri wa ĩtatũ mwaka ũcio ndingĩkĩmenya nĩ ũrĩkũ.
Niĩ ndikomete ndaiguire ngĩigua tũrũ 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 hĩndĩ ĩyo nĩ mĩcinga.
Mothers, sons, and daughters, awakened by the heat of the flames, frantically try to escape by climbing out of windows, breaking down doors, only to be met by Mau guns and tankers.
We nĩ ũkĩgaĩirwo gwaku. Andũ acio mũkerwo mũtikae kũmaiguĩra tha o nao mũmanine othe.
Niĩ ndanyitĩte mwana ũguo. Mwana agĩtemengwo anga nĩwe wahotirwo ngĩigua akĩng'orota.
Kau kangi naigua nĩ arĩa me gĩkundi akĩgũthwo ũguo rĩ ngĩona agwa na mwana wake.
The Mau surrounded the homes of Chief Luka, his wives, relatives, and any other loyalists in the area. They then set each home ablaze. Anyone who managed to escape was hacked to death. Luka was murdered alongside 2 of his wives and 8 of his children.
Rĩu magĩtũtemenga marĩkia kuma mathire makĩhũra ibiriti o nyũmba ciothe ikĩhũrwo ibiriti.
Akomete na nda akarorio ũguo kĩanda ũguo akarora na kĩanda ũguo rĩu ũguo na ithe ndakwĩra haha gĩcere gĩkĩ kĩa mũtu gĩtiarĩ ho gĩkĩ ũguo mamutemire makĩruta magĩthiĩ nakĩo.
Anengeretwo mũgũnda anengere andũ akĩgaĩra mũgũnda mũnene mũno kuma haha ũguo gũthiĩ ũguo kinya mũtitũ rĩ kwarĩ gwake. Rĩu rĩ akĩrĩ mũno tondũ ndendaga ng'ombe tũkarĩithie kuo, ndarĩ kĩndũ endaga ngũ iciunwo nĩ atumia, na endaga atĩa rĩu enda gũtikae gũkinywo nĩ mũ.
Because of that bitterness of family members getting best land and the others getting poor land, that was one of the motivations of the Lari massacre.
Morning brings a scene of horror to grief-stricken relatives who search the ruins for more victims.
It was Gikuyu against Gikuyu. And the Wazungus were very happy about this because remember that was 1953. So the Wazungus now wanted to prove that Kikuyus are savages.
An attack by men born to tribal respect for women and children, now gone berserk in an orgy of insane fury.
But the British covered that, and they were heaping every wrongdoing to the freedom fighters. We had no chance to counter that.
Mau Mau has committed the most vicious atrocity in Kenya's history.
Mau Mau did not kill the people in Lari for nothing. It was a reiteration of what they were done by the collaborators and the British colonial officers.
Andũ magĩkĩhũngwo mahuri thigari ũmga timu iria tũkugaga we warĩ mbara-inĩ ũyũ ndiamuonire ũyũ nĩwe warĩ kwang'ania ũyũ nĩwe warĩ kwang'ania.
Rĩu gũtigakinya hĩndĩ nĩ kwambĩrĩria rĩu gũtahwo andũ acio marutire wĩra ũcio mĩciĩ gũtahwo.
For refusing to cooperate with the police, whole communities are punished. Herds of cattle, sheep, goats, vital assets in the lives of Kikuyus, are impounded by the government and driven away to collecting centers.
No indo gũtiagĩtigirwo kũrĩ nginya ng'ombe tondũ ciaiyĩrirwo thabarĩ cia baba kwanja ciaiyĩrirwo na mbugi kĩbugi gĩgekĩrwo ng'ombe na ndũũ gĩkaihũra. Rĩu ithuĩ twakĩanja mathĩna hau.
They took a lot of livestock from the people, not only the people of Lari, all over the country where the British colonial battalion, that battalion was called the British Yorkshire Fusiliers.
Aroused by the Mau Mau threat to all existing law and order, government police and loyal Kikuyu begin to strike back with swift and grim justice.
A swift retaliatory attack by the white colonialists on the Mau Mau would further spread death amongst the Agikuyu community as they sought to teach them a lesson for murdering those loyal to them.
Vale kikihurano, igikihurano, aria maiguire guoyari na kwarĩrwo mweri macokire magĩtuĩka berenda acio nĩo moimbũrire arĩa angĩ mũno atĩ mwana ũyũ nĩanyuĩte ũyũ nĩanyuĩte ũyũ nĩanyuĩte.
The attack on the Mau Mau would last for 2 weeks, sparing no one, not women or children. For many, this was seen as the true massacre.
Wĩra nĩ warutirwo nginya ndigekumbũra tũgateng'ũka tũgekĩrwo mĩcuba atumia magekĩrwo mĩcuba.
Women were inserted bottles of hot water into their private parts by the British soldiers and the collaborators. There is nothing evil that was not done to our people at Lari.
You have let loose upon this land a flood of misery and unhappiness.
Muno kwa kwĩrĩa andũ aingĩ mũno tondũ kĩhota gũtara ithabu kũragwo. Ta rĩu ũngĩgĩtwara rĩu haha harĩ mũciĩ, hau harĩ mũciĩ ũngĩ, haha nao harĩ mũciĩ ũngĩ, na igua rĩu na wĩna andũ nĩ moragwo othe. Kuma hĩndĩ ĩyo rĩ gũkũ gũtiagaga thigari irorũra gũkũ na ngari cia gũkora igakũnyita.
Rĩu o niĩ na arĩa angĩ matagĩthiaga thukuru nĩ ithuĩ twatwaragĩra baba irio mũtitũ rĩu wĩ hau View Point. Maikaraga ihiga mungu iria uga ciĩtagwo tarĩ ngurunga. Rĩu rĩ mbũri twĩhũrĩrĩria ngurunga-inĩ na irio rĩu tũikie tũkĩũrũrange hau na mbũri citũ tũrũrange twĩ ciana nyingĩ Twagicoka riu hindi ya kumira
hoya ima ma nya mungai uria watene ni mune auriro yumete githunguri ya njomo amenye twakinyire ndatuikire coordinator wa andu aria makoragwo maria mbara mutitu ni ndamonagia uria meguthie ni ndamaheaga kwa gukoma magithie ngogu ni undu ucio ni njiguaga ruo uhoro ucio githie urire riera-ini wakaga ciana kumenya ati kwi hindi bururi wari mutahe na wakomborirwo na andu metagwo na maritwa mao magakigwetwo.
As thousands of natives are rounded up and brought before survivors of the massacre and questioned, the hunt for more terrorists goes on. Meanwhile, investigations are hampered by streams of refugee Kikuyus.
Githunguri would later become another focal point in the history of the massacre, as courthouses began to be constructed by Indian workmen a few days later.
Ironically, the site chosen for the trial is the location of Jomo Kenyatta's Teachers College. This had been part of his program to develop an African school system independent of religious and government-sponsored institutions.
Githunguri was the center of the Gikuyu resistance, both religiously and also with most of the Mau Mau were from that area, from Githunguri.
The seer, Mogo Kifiro, had prophesied that this is where the power, where the peace will originate, and the altar will be built here. That is the shrine. So the Europeans were always ahead of us. They knew that this was a sacred place, and therefore they wanted to spoil it by spilling blood of people here.
But despite many obstacles and delays, within 3 weeks, over 300 suspects are held for trials by courts convened under special orders of the government.
Chief McNay, no ari munene guku. Agikioyo na radiro bagitwarwo ku. Na keho nyumba ku. Leu ku nikuo achaguragira andu.
Kikuyu chieftains appointed by the court act as assessors to help the presiding magistrate determine the guilt or innocence of the accused. In all, 13 trials are held in which 75 men are convicted and sentenced to be hanged for their crimes.
And they set an execution gallows in Githunguri.
Teams of laborers are brought in to build special gallows should the death sentences be upheld for those convicted of taking part in the Lari massacre.
Ha niho hakitwo nyumba na ni atharirio ni mukoroni tondu mundu ugwitwo muvea ikaraga oro hau muromo ari o hau mundu atonya akandikirwo kiria agacaina na akahoerwo muvea akainanga karamu agate agethamba moko ndakanakinyirwo ni mehia mau.
In speeches from the prisoner's dock, many said they would like to take the Kikuyu Thengi oath to prove their innocence. Each one made a long address to the judge denying his guilt and accusing the prosecution witnesses of prejudice against him.
Okorwo ti mukuo karingwo na nyondo akeherio. Okorwo ni ahonoka macini hanini ndekuhutio egucokio ringi muthenya ungi. He mundu wageririo maita matatu akirema na arakuire kia Ngai. Aria maitiirwo ha list ira ndinayo ni andu 58 matwaragwo Red Nova rucini thaa 2:30 na matwaragwo matari ahumbire na kindu rori open maikithio guo tango nigetha andu metigire ura muthungu arenda kana matigane na mbara mone ni meguthira na majority andu aria meitirwo haha marutitwo Rari.
I was young, But I was told, you will not see so-and-so anymore. He was hanged yesterday. We really got frightened very, very much.
But those are few people who were taken to Githunguri gallows. Many of others were killed in the villages.
Soon, battalions of British regulars are flown in from England, Germany, and the Suez Canal zone, bringing the total forces engaged in Kenya to over 7,000 white troops and 4,000 of the King's African riflemen, in addition to over 20,000 local reserve soldiers and police. There are more troops actively engaged in fighting Mau Mau than the total number of white settlers in the colony. Numbers of Mau Maus accounted for by the planes are painted on the fuselage as pilots prepare for another flight to flush out secret hideouts that cannot be seen from the ground. And out of this, many can see an end to the reign of Mau Mau violence and terror.
We used what we called at that time a brain gun, where they shoot a group of people all together. About 20, 30 people are fallen. They were then collected, put in a lorry, and they were dumped in trenches dug by tractors.
The population of the Agikuyu was 4 million before the emergency war, before 1950. But by the end of the struggle, in 1961, the population of the Agikuyu was 2 million. So the 2 million remains unaccounted for. So many young men were killed, massacred by the Wazungus, translocated, some died in detention and were buried there.
Ladies were left without their men around, and they stayed like that. We have a lot of single parents even now, because the families went through a period where they didn't have a father figure in the family. So these girls, some of them just took life that they can do it without a man. And it has affected our community quite a lot.
Onasiugaga atiri mwandiki mwarwagira ugikioju guo ni mwana ri ukumwira atia acio ni iri mureke ngwire bara ndiri mwago
barandere mwago ona mwamiona ni atuninyeire marigithani aciariro miai mecie na ng'ono twathie kukugeria no tukainuka twatwareirwo kware-inĩ cia mahiga na tũtiamenyaga kũrĩa twatwareirwo ngĩigua chomo ndarĩ na ndiamenyaga ngĩringwo kũgũrũ ngĩtuĩka kĩonje.
When the British at home said Kenya will have their own country, that is where intrigues and betrayal came about.
Mzungu destroyed these places.
Mwarega kuoya kĩrĩa twĩnakĩo haha mũgũtũra nduma-inĩ.
Twakuhoya wendani na gitio na tha nyingi cia wendo wa ruriri Ngai ari mbere tutingihotwo ni thu mwene nyaga twakuhoya
Twakuhoya tukonana twiothe kuma Ngong'u kinya kari matura hindi iyo kihani gigathira njamba cia ita na ciaria itu Kenyatta yu hau turehere wiathi nawe mbio yoyeta ria andu airu Kenya yothe iyuirwo ni maithori tukiuria wira thiugukari.
Therefore, when the British at home said Kenya will have their own country, British colonial administrators, loyalists, home guards got together. The Mau Mau who are imprisoned in jail, in detention camp, in an emergency village, will be freed. Now that we tortured them, we sent them to jail, where are we going to be? Now, that is where intrigues and betrayal came about, and the British government said, I will do something that you will be the people leading the government.
At midnight, December 12th, 1963, Kenya was declared independent. The formal instruments of independence being handed over by the Duke of Edinburgh, Prince Philip, to Kenyatta before a crowd of 40,000 gathered in a colourful ceremony held at Uhuru Gardens in Nairobi.
And they did that without all the people who were fighting for independence.
Andũ arĩa macokire kũnyita maũndũ marĩa manene rĩ nĩ andũ arĩa me mwena ũcio wa thirikari. Naigua rĩu makĩandĩkwo mawĩra magĩthoma.
They went to grab businesses that the Europeans were leaving. Therefore, everything produced by our victory through fighting the British colonial government was received by corroborators.
So you find even when we tried to say that we were Mau Mau, our fathers were trying to say those who are in the government were against because they did not support even from the initial stage. That's why we have kept on struggling to bring this in right.
We still know each other. Yes, because maybe my father went to bush, he was your Kamatimo, so we know you are this way and I'm that way. If one does something which is not appealing to the community, you will hear people repeat that. Sini son of that Kamatimo, the one who used to cut people's heads. They still talk that way.
Most of the British soldiers that settled here left after independence, and the land has changed ownership several times to its current owners. The lush and green hills here in Tigoni area tuck away what was a painful period for the Agikoyo people, as they had their ancestral land wrestled away from them in what was seen as betrayal from their very own. But even now, the disparities between Lari and Tigoni are still very much alive. These unkempt homes packed closely together in Kamirithu sit forlorn and gaunt, a sore reminder of the unrelenting struggle for resources. But in stark contrast, Tigoni could easily be confused for a rural British setting. Large homes spot the vast and neat tea farms springing from the fertile land, and smoothly paved roads slice through the greenery.
Ona tutiririkanago tondu no korwo ni migunda tutire migunda yari kuo ni yanyihire tondu no korwo thoguo ari na eka 10 agaire atumia 5 na rĩu nĩ eka 2 kuri tucitũ nyamu twoirwo ni thirikari twa barabara ki tondu barabara iria ikuo no iria ciarĩ cia mũthũ mbere ya mũthũngũ cia tĩri.
For those Kikuyus considered to be likely candidates for the Mau Mau, internment camps have been established. Camp chaplains are instructed to effect a change of heart and mind in the internees by substituting a Christian code of behavior for Mau Mau paganism.
Almost every corner in Lari constituency is flanked by a church. The Agekoyo rejected the Christian faith, believed to have been brought by the white settlers, but it would eventually dilute the simmering tension.
Acokire kugaruka thindi ya Lari nie ta nie gicanya kanitha wa PCA nikuo njikariite miaka yothe kuma bara ya njira.
You know, when people get a lot of problems, they remember God. And if you ask them to put a church in every home so that God can come there, they will do that. You see, because they want peace, they like peace, they do not want that kind of action to be repeated.
Ithuĩ tũtigiwa andũ acio mekwo ũru home guard matikae gwĩkwo ũru marekwo maikare no tũtikariganĩrwo ũrĩa mekire.
Ndĩramarikana njiguaga atĩrĩrĩ nĩkorwo andũ no makorwo mendanĩte na makorwo makĩaria lugha ĩmwe na makorwo makĩbanga mũbango ũmwe no gũkorwo gwĩ kwega mũno tondũ gũtingĩkorwo ona haro ĩkĩ ona ha kũingĩrĩra ũguo nĩ njigua atĩ haro ti njega ta irikanĩro.
That is forgiven. But it is something that no sensible person can say that it can be forgotten.
The Mau Mau was a justified war. Despite the Mzungu calling them terrorists, their war was justified because it was for a just cause. The Mau Mau did not get what they got for, but we got what they fought for. We who are living today. Because we have the freedom, we have the independence, we have the land.
Now as bulldozers move in,
The Mzungu destroyed these places because they knew the people still are not happy. They destroyed them to try and maybe clear the minds of the people, but people still know the places where people were buried massively.
In the neighboring Githunguri town, a nearly century-old law court sits behind the construction works for the Githunguri Level 5 hospital. Mau Mau freedom fighters once walked through its frayed, decaying doors to learn their fate. Its morbid past now perhaps weighs on it, as the pillars exhibit cracks and weeds sprout from its bottom. This is the only structure left that tells a tale of that dark period in history. Those found guilty for their rebellion were taken less than a kilometer away to the gallows where they were hanged. And now, the padlocks that seal off these doors lock away a part of history that many wanted erased. But the survival of this building was not always guaranteed.
When we got the public participation, they were asked to decide between eating the history or getting the hospital facilities that are coming here. And of course, anonymously, all of them were shouting that they would prefer the hospital. After the intervention, that is when we got the nod to preserve it, but others, it was almost being destroyed for the in exchange of the hospital.
We are asking the Kiambu County government perhaps to put up a monument there where we'll have the names of these people written.
Nigetha maritwo mandu ara maitiirwo haha mambiririo haha maikurukite kuringana na thiko iria mekaga atia mangirega kuiganira tuke ha angikorwo hari angi mariganiire matekire atiri thani ino ne gukorwo ikiiganite gwika ati bodi ino nigetha andu moka magakiona andu ara maitirwo na aria makwirire bururi na tondu murathaka na bururi ni mukuire na thakame ya mundu ndiuragata ya nyamu na makwire tiri na matiarihirwo.
And I think this is a challenge to our national museums, that whereas they use a lot of money to do modern things, there should be really an effort to preserve some of these sites for our history, so that currently, when our young people threaten each other to war, using either political narratives, political propaganda, they have something to refer to and realize that the extremes are sometimes massacres like Lari, because Lari was Gikuyu against Gikuyu. It was not Muzungu against Gikuyu.
We were young then, so you can imagine those people who really did the best part, most of them are not there. We only saw something that we call Nagikuyu Madhibishi, something at the, at the end. But haria uhoro wari, where it was really deep, most of these people are not there.
I am an old man. I cannot run, and I am keeping forgetting things.
Muke twandike history ya bururi ya haria tu ithui tumutigire nigetha mumenye kuria bururi umite na haria ukinyite na uria ukite na kuma twagia wiathi ukite atia nigetha na nyu mumenye mukururia naku ithui twiriwa rirathwa mwarega kuoya kiria twina kio haha mugutura nduma-ini.
Ngai mwega we mutangeri waita mwamokeri magongo na mandwairo Ngai uri mbere tutingihoto nithu mwene nyaga twakoya etuhoyaga endani na gitio na tha nyingi cia mwendwa wa ruriri uiguano wa Gikuyu na Mumbi mwene nyaga twakoya